Hey guys, Neil Lockhart Photography. Welcome to part two of my Ghost Town edit session. What we're looking at here is basically where we left the file after part one of the video, which if you haven't seen, I'll go ahead and throw a link up in the upper right hand corner. Definitely recommend you watch that just to see how we got here. And let's get going. We got a lot to do. So this image is pretty much ready to go. We're just going to go ahead and open image, which will load it into Photoshop. And we're going to take some serious artistic license on this image. Like I said in the previous video, there's a lot to see here, but I don't really feel like there's any clear defined subject, and I really want that truck to be the star of the show. So what we're going to do to achieve that is we're going to basically darken this portion of the background. We're going to replace this sky. We're going to get rid of this truck. We're going to do some dodging and burning, and we're just going to really make this image pop. So the first thing we need to do is isolate the truck and the foreground from the background. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a matte. And basically a matte is a black and white representation of the image. Anything that's white is going to remain, and anything that's black is going to become transparent. So what I would do, I would go ahead and create a new layer. And I would just zoom in here. I'd get crazy with the zoom tool actually. Yeah, I'd like 300%. I'd go to my polygonal lasso, and I would just start selecting this truck very carefully around the edge and go all the way around it. And I'm not going to subject you to that. That's my own personal hell that I don't like to share. But I do want you to see kind of the process and how it works. So let's just go ahead and create this real fast and sloppy. I'm just going to pretend I'm doing a good job here. This is the worst mask I've ever made in my entire life. Looks like you can see through the hood here, so I'm just going to unselect that portion, unselect this window. Looks like you can see through the back window, and you can see through the back window there as well. So let's say that's perfectly selected. I'm on a new layer, and I'm just going to fill that with white. Now that's going to preserve the truck because it's white. So the other thing I wanted to do is preserve the foreground. So I'm going to create another new layer, and I'm just going to draw a large box and maybe go up a little higher here, and I'm going to fill that with white. Now if we use that as the mask as is, we would have a very unnatural transition from one exposure to the next. So the way to get around that, and since we're on a separate layer, we can blur just that foreground mask. Just going to use a Gaussian blur, and 112.9, that's exactly what I was going to type in. So we'll just go with that. And I'm going to create one more layer, which will be the black, which is the transparent area. Just going to fill that with black. And it looks like I've got a little bit of an edge showing there. I'm just going to go back, grab a paintbrush, use white, and I'm just going to kind of paint this area here just so we have a nice smoother transition and we don't have any weird edges. So basically what we're looking at here, the truck is going to be preserved right to the edge nice and perfectly, and then the background is going to transition from the lighter exposure to the darker exposure that we're going to bring in a second. So anything that's white will be preserved, anything that's black will be transparent, and this area of gradation will be a nice natural soft transition. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these guys. That was just kind of for show and tell. And I actually took the time to create the mask beforehand, so I'm just going to load that. I'm going to select it, cut it, and then coming back to this, I'm going to right click on my background layer and turn it into a layer from background. And what that does is it just allows you to use masks. So I'm going to go ahead and layer from background, okay. And then I'm going to alt click my mask icon right here. And then I'm going to alt click on the mask itself to drop me into the mask. And then I'm going to paste the mask that I created. Now when we go back to the foreground layer here, you'll see that the truck is perfectly preserved and the background slowly fades out. So now what we need is our second exposure. And I'm just going to duplicate my original image here. And I'm going to launch that into Adobe Camera Raw. And I'm just going to take about, I don't know, a stop or so of light off it. maybe, how about 1¼ stops of light. So basically what I'm doing here is it's like I'm almost creating a bracketed image that's underexposed. And the beauty of doing it this way is if you're shooting anything that's moving like water, or if you've got some wind and the bushes are moving, by creating your second bracket in this manner, you will avoid any kind of shift, any kind of ghosting, anything like that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for creating an overexposed bracket, just because you could introduce noise, but certainly for introducing or for doing something like this where you just need an underexposed shot, this is a great way to do it. So all I've done is I've just brought my exposure down 1¼ stops. I'm going to open that image and I'm going to cut and paste someday. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to select that, cut, and I'm going to paste. And it dropped it right on top, but I'm just going to drag it to the bottom. And now what you see is the truck with the light from the first exposure, and this background is 1¼ stops darker, and already that's making the truck really pop. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to knock out this sky. And again, I would just grab my polygonal lasso and just cut that out. I mean, you can use the magic wand tool, but sometimes you'll get artifacting and you might have some halos on your edges, and by the time you're done messing with that, I think sometimes it's just quicker to just do it by hand. So that's the method I use. I just zoom in real close and just start selecting and erasing as I go. So I've already taken the time to cut that mat out, so we'll go ahead and grab that. Here's the skyline. So I'm just going to select that, cut that, and then again, just like we did before, I'm going to Alt-click on the mask icon, Alt-click to go into the mask, and then I'm going to paste my mat. Now when we come back, we have the light foreground, the underexposed background, and an empty sky. So now we need a sky. So fortunately, about 20 minutes earlier, I took this shot, same location, same place, same day. This was just before the sun broke the horizon, and we just had these beautiful colors. So I'm going to use this sky, and I'm going to call that time stacking. Just, it sounds so much better than cheating. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my sky. I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to drop it in here and bring it to the bottom. And there we go. We have the sky in there now. I'm going to go ahead and lock these layers so I don't accidentally bump them. And that's going to let me just move that sky around. And I'm actually going to scale it just a little bit because I know it's bigger than the other layer, just because I cropped the truck. So I just want to scale that down just a little bit. And then it's just a matter of using the move tool here. I'm on this layer and I'm just going to drag it up. And if you keep dragging up, obviously you're going to reveal that other horizon, which isn't a good thing. So you can just bring that down, and then it's just really about, where you think it looks best. I kind of think it's pretty cool, kind of somewhere in here maybe. It's almost like a leading line that's drawing your eye to the truck. So yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll call that good. The next thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and unlock these layers again. Is this immediate foreground, I think, is a little brighter than it needs to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to this light layer, which is the bright layer. See how it's putting the bright light on? And if you look at the mask, we're seeing all that bright light because it's solid white down here. So if I paint some black in here, we're going to reveal the underexposed shot. So I'm just going to click on my mask. I'm going to grab my brush. I'm going to change it to black. I'm going to make it nice and big and soft. And then I'm just going to paint, and what that's doing is it's just revealing the underexposed layer. Now, if that's a little too much, I can go up to Edit, Fade, and then I can fade that right out, completely out, or anywhere in between. So maybe somewhere around 60%. That's pretty cool. All right, that's looking a lot better. So I think I'm pretty happy with all this. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. And And then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this truck right here. I don't know what it is. You know, it probably would have been easier to just move the truck, but you know, whatever. So I'm going to use my clone tool, which is this guy right here. And I'm going to just change my brush size. And I'm going to alt-click on the area where I want to clone from, which is, I want to just continue this line right down here. So I'm going to grab up here. And then you can see in my brush tool that area that I've grabbed. So now if I just come here and I line that line up, I can just start cloning away that truck. I'm going to start again up here a little higher. And then I'm just going to kind of copy in this tailing pile. Let's continue this line going down. Yeah, maybe a little smaller. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's get rid of the rest of the truck. This I can just grab from this hillside. And I like to grab from multiple points on the hillside. Just that way it prevents the pattern from being, you know, an exact duplicate of what you're cloning. You're kind of changing where you're grabbing from, so it doesn't create an exact duplicate of the area you're cloning from. So we're just going to kind of clone this out. I'm going to grab this. Yeah, it might have been easier to move the truck, but whatever. Oh, I'm just going to grab here, kind of clone that out. And I'm going to go with a little bit softer brush and just kind of knock some of this back. There we go. And maybe just a little bit of something in here just to kind of fill that. All right, just taking a look at that. I think it looks good. I don't see any obvious repetition of anything. So I'm going to call that good. While we're working with the clone tool here, I'm just going to look at the image and just see. I like to look at it and just see, is there anything that's really distracting from the image that's not adding any value? Excuse me. And I think these rocks right here, I mean, they're just little white spots and they're not really doing anything for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and rock be gone them. So I'm just going to grab here. There we go. And this guy, this looks like it might be a piece of trash or something. And really this whole green bush, I'm just going to get rid of it. And I'm going to grab from this darker area over here to just kind of continue that. There we go. Looks like a little bit of green right there. Not anymore. A little bit of green right there. Okay, so let's zoom back out again. Oh, there's something else right here. Just going to get rid of this guy. Like that. Okay, what else? What else? This little bush down here in the corner, that's... I'm always looking for a simpler composition if possible. Actually, I'm going to undo that. Looks like I'm cloning something that's a little too bright. I'm going to grab this darker area over here. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. There we go. So yeah, less is more in a lot of this stuff. You know, the cleaner your composition is, I just think the better the image will look. I could get rid of this guy. I'm just going to leave him here. This old pipe, it's not really bothering me. It's kind of in the dark anyway, so I'm going to leave that there. So the next step is just, I'm going to do some dodging and burning on the cab of the truck just to give it a little more punch. So I'm going to just come in here. Let's go to 100%. And I'm going to select Dodge, which will brighten things. I have my range set to highlights, and what that means is it's only going to brighten the highlights. So if I were to scrub over these springs, it's not going to brighten any of the dark spots. It's just the highlights. And you'll notice I have it set to 12, which is very minimal. So I'm just adding a little bit of punch in there. Let's just going to kind of add some light to this. And I really think this technique just really makes things super dimensional. It just adds a bit of nice kind of rounding, and it just gives it a really 3D kind of look. Now you can overdo this. If I just go nuts and just keep dodging that, it's just going to blow it out. And so you do want to be careful. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. But you do want to be careful there. So I'm just going to do a little bit of dodging here. Let's get these fenders. I like to follow the contours of, the shape if I can. Maybe a little under here. I'm basically highlighting the areas that are already highlighted and just adding just a little more punch to them. So like this edge here is highlighted. Maybe I'll come through here a little bit. And let's get the hood. Now that's pretty bright already. I don't really want to blow that out, but maybe this fender here. Maybe a little bit in here. And then, like here it looks like, the metal's bent, so I might kind of follow that contour just to kind of accentuate that curve. So, getting close to blowing out, just being a little careful here. This looks like it could be a little brighter. All right. Maybe a little bit in here. And then looking, oh dear, what have I done? Looking at the rest of it, I think these bushes could actually benefit from a little bit of dodging too. So I'm just going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to hit the highlighted side. So I'm going to grab my dodge tool again. And I'm just looking for areas that are already kind of naturally highlighted. The sun's coming in from the right side, so I'm just going to kind of hit the right side of these bushes. A little goes a long way with this stuff. You don't have to, make them completely glowing, but just a little bit of extra light. My hope with this video is that, even if you learn one thing, that it's worth it. I watch a ton of these kind of videos, and, a lot of times, I understand what they're doing, and, I'm not necessarily learning anything new, but man, if even one little thing that I learn can be so valuable, it's just, I really hope that you guys take something away from this. And it's just, it's always interesting to me to watch other videos and just see other people's workflow. It's just fascinating. So kind of hoping that that you guys take something away from this and can integrate some of these techniques into your own workflow if they work for you. The nice thing about Photoshop is there's 100 ways to do the same task. So one method might work well for one type of image and another for another, but yeah, so okay, let's back out and look and see what we've done. So yeah, I've just added some dimensionality to those bushes back there, and I think that's pretty cool. So one last thing I might do is just a little more dodging and burning. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to duplicate my layer, and then I'm going to do my actually just burning, which is going to make things darker. So I've got a big soft brush, and I'm just going to go through here and just do a little more selective darkening. Now that might be a little too much, But the nice thing is since that's on a separate layer, I can just control that layer just with my opacity slider. So, you know, here's 100%, here's 0, but somewhere around 40% is pretty cool. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and save this. We'll just call it Edit. And then I kind of wanted to just show you a before and after, just so you can see really where we've come from. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to pop back into Bridge. And so here's my original image that we edited in part 1. I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to do it to the copy. I'm going to delete all the edits that we made to it. I'm just going to clear it, clear settings, and that's going to revert it back to the original image, just straight out of camera, no adjustments whatsoever. And then I'm going to select our edited image, and so here's what we started with, and here's where we ended. So it's a little heavy-handed maybe. I might have taken it a little too far for the sake of the tutorial, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys my editing workflow, and you know, just how far you can take an image. So I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel. Leave me a like and a thumbs up, and I would also love to hear your thoughts on different topics you'd like me to cover. So if you have any suggestions for future videos, you know, I'd love to hear it. Would you like to see more tutorials like this? Would you rather see, you know, me out in the field capturing images, or maybe a little bit of both? Or if there's a certain subject matter that you'd be interested in seeing or having a tutorial on, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.